Thank you very much for the support. Okay, this might not be as pretty as the PowerPoint presentation, but what counts is the content. So thank you very much for having me. Maybe another quick introduction. My name is Valentina Ludwig. I'm a clinical psychologist, 27 years old, and I was very happy to participate in the conduction of this study, and I'm very grateful to be able to present our results to you today. So what I would like to present today are the results of a study which was published in December of 2022. And as was already mentioned, the study was commissioned by the Federal Anti-Discrimination Agency and carried out by our research group at MSB Medical School Berlin. We do actually believe that our study and the results we aggregated are a good starting point to constructively start discussing the topic of ageism, and also to start the discussion of countermeasures and possibilities to increase the social participation of all age groups. If you could scroll down, please.
Yeah.
Perfect. So what you see here is the cover image of our study and the German title, which would translate to Images of Aging, Age Discrimination in Germany. And as the title already suggests, our research was focused on assessing prevalent images of aging, as well as the prevalences of age discrimination. Okay. So it was our aim to generate a well-founded data pool on how the German general public, so everyday people, perceive older people and how they feel about old age and aging in general. So in other words, our research question was, what ideas, attitudes, and beliefs exist about older people within the German general public? Next slide, please. We surveyed a random selection of 2,000 people aged 16 and over within private households and across age groups. This is especially prominent because our oldest respondent was 96 years old. So we had like a very large age span spanning, 80 years. It has to be said that a study including participants of such diverse age samples and in the size of participants that we managed to recruit is so far unique and pretty innovative. So to realize our study, we did conduct telephone interviews in the period from January 10th to January 25th, 2022, so almost 1.5 years ago. With our approach, we were able to draw a sample that is actually representative of the German general population in terms of age, education, region, geographical region they live in, as well as household size. And this remains representative even when we take statistical weighting into consideration. And now, after all the forewords, I will start to present the central results of our study. On the next slide, please. Thank you. So as I already mentioned, we did conduct interviews, and at the beginning of the interviews, our respondents were asked to rate at what age people are starting to consider other individuals as old within our society. The graph you can see here, the very large graph, depicts the wide range of answers received in response to this question. Around 18% of the sample saw the age threshold, so the age people are starting to be considered old at 70 years, which is actually pretty high, while other respondents placed this age threshold at just 50 years or even earlier. On average, the perceived societal age threshold was 61 years. And at this point, it must be mentioned that in other European countries, the social age threshold is significantly higher, meaning that one is considered as old much, much later in life. For example, a pretty recent survey in the Netherlands showed that the perceived societal age threshold is 10 years later than in Germany, so starting in the early 70s, just to put our results into perspective. Our results also show that there is no general consensus on a societal age threshold, but on average within Germany, it is pretty low. And this can pose as a problem. Being perceived as old very early within the lifespan can, for example, lead to people receiving fewer opportunities for further training at the workplace, or maybe even wanting to leave the workforce or retire sooner because the societal label of old is being internalized pretty early. We also directly asked participants, at what age would you personally describe someone as old? And respondents stated an average age of 69 years. And this means, which is a little fiddly, that there is a large discrepancy between the societal age threshold, which was just at 61 years, and the personal age threshold, which we found to be at 69 years. A possible interpretation of this is that there might be the general idea, consciously or subconsciously, that the public threshold of describing people as old might be even too low. And what I show on the next slide is that in our survey, we also found that there is relatively little knowledge about older people within the presentation. We asked some basic questions, such as estimating the percentage of people aged 70 and older within German society. 74% of respondents significantly overestimated this percentage, even when allowing for a larger statistical margin of error. Even less knowledge was present among the respondents when asked about the percentage of people aged 70 years and older who are living within nursing homes. An astonishing 81% of our participants significantly overestimated the percentage of older people in nursing homes, with the majority considerably overestimating the number. Terms like aging populations or care burden, which are pretty prevalent in the media, can contribute to this overestimation and the impression of a perceived dominance or majority of older people within society. In light of these results, we believe that the dissemination of factual knowledge about demographic change and the topic of aging is an immensely important factor of public education. On the next slide, I present the third result of our survey, which suggests that respondents across age groups do not only have one very distinct image or view on aging, and that this view on aging they hold is not only negative. Instead, the views and perceptions of old age and aging are pretty ambivalent within our sample and by proxy within the German population. On one hand, as it is depicted in the graph here, the majority of respondents agrees that old people do in fact have significant limitations in their daily life due to health issues. But the majority also agrees with the statement that older people are maybe lonely and have a hard time adapting to changes. About 2 out of 3 people agree or completely agree with those statements. But on the other hand, as the next slide says, the vast majority of respondents, to put it in numbers, 94%, are convinced that it is possible for people to remain mentally and physically fit in old age. Additionally, we found that 73% of respondents attribute a calm and composed approach to important life issues in older individuals. Overall, we observe clear indications of the existence of the very classic negative age stereotype among the respondents. For example, older people are lonely, inflexible, or ill. However, at the same time, it seems that the message of the physical and mental potential of old age, which has been frequently promoted in recent years, has also made its way into people's minds as a new image of aging. And furthermore, the classic positive stereotype of wisdom and composure also continues to exist. We should note that this mixed negative positive, or maybe even to say ambivalent perception, is also found when we inquire about attitudes towards the phase of life known as old age. Therefore, we believe that it is very important to counter the possibly culturally ingrained deficit-oriented image of aging in public discourse with a potential-oriented one. However, it is also essential to create additional spaces for experiences that allow individuals to confront their own negative attitudes and the underlying fears of age-related losses and changes. This is because only through such means can age-related fears, which are often projected onto older individuals and lead to age discrimination, be both recognized and reduced. On the next slide, I would like to point out that, however, the results I just presented need to also be qualified by an important point. Older adults, our older respondents, had a more nuanced perspective on aging compared to younger respondents. In our sample, as individuals age, they often see more potential in the face of old age, but especially the age group aged 75 and over also more frequently recognizes the challenges of aging, such as loneliness and cognitive or physical restrictions. And this is likely a result of their personal experiences with aging, both within themselves and in others. And for us, this result implies that the public discourse on aging could greatly benefit from a more nuanced perspective of older and very old individuals. However, this is not currently the case. So in the future, it is absolutely crucial to give a voice to older and especially very old individuals and not solely rely on narratives about aging created by young and middle-aged adults. Everyone should get a voice and should receive the stage to present his or her own agenda. The next slide might be a little surprising because it is blank. I kept the slide blank on purpose because in our study, we also asked about the perception of the societal contribution and role of the older generation. Overall, it has been revealed that the older generation, and as I said, I purposefully refrained from providing a figure illustration here, is generally not perceived as a burden on the economy by a larger majority of respondents. But as the next slide shows, there is a clear indication of the younger respondents' inclusive and supportive, perhaps even somewhat benevolently and paternalistic attitude when it comes to granting rights to older people. As you can see here, we asked about approval for certain regulations in public life, such as workplace safety, housing rentals, and credit worthiness. With the exception of the topic of driving fitness checks and the age limit for political offices, the younger population is much more likely to grant older people separate benefits and rights than the older population grants itself. They more often support, and they being younger individuals, more often supported age-friendly workplaces and supermarket checkouts, as well as the prohibition of evictions for elderly tenants due to personal use. They are more likely than older respondents to oppose age-related restrictions and credit lending as well. However, and I will now move on to this figure on the next slide. Many respondents also perceive the older generation as less innovative and more as obstructors of societal progress, especially among the youngest respondents. Let's, for example, consider the statement, older people make a crucial contribution to the progress of our society, which respondents could either agree or disagree with. In the overall sample, the statement was rejected by slightly more respondents, with 53% disagreeing compared to those who agreed. But among respondents aged 16 to 24, 37% believe that older people contribute to the progress of society, while among those aged over 74, 54% believed that older people do contribute to society's progress. On the next slide, it shows that we also assessed the perceived societal role of older people in the context of climate change, which is a very emotionally laden topic. Surprisingly, 40% of respondents agreed with the statement that young people are being let down by older people in addressing climate change. Among respondents in the youngest age group, agreement with this statement is significantly higher than among those aged 75 and older, with a 63% agreement versus 23% agreement. And this was actually a statement in the entire questionnaire which showed the most significant age differences in the responses. Elsewhere in the survey, it also became evident that younger respondents perceive a high concentration of political power in the older generation, more so than vice versa. Overall, different perspectives between age groups, or rather between generations, on a perceived political position level are emerging. From our perspective, it is essential to address and reduce these tensions in the interest of societal progress and to prevent hostile ageism towards the older generation, mostly in the sense that the current older generation does not continue to become a scapegoat for individual mishappenings, possibly. The next slide shows that in the survey, we did not only ask about how older people are perceived by respondents, but also asked about how older people should be and what expectations exist for older individuals. Among other things, we assessed to what extent respondents agreed that older people should remain active. In this figure here, you can see that almost all respondents, and this is a very high number, 98% of respondents indicated that older people should stay physically and especially mentally active. Additionally, 73% of respondents either somewhat or completely agreed that older people should stay up to date with new technological advances. There is also an expectation that older people should contribute to the well-being of society for as long as possible. From our perspective, from a psychological perspective, we see a very high potential for the prescriptive norm of being active and aging successfully. However, our society must be mindful that in cases where older people do not adequately follow those norms, whether due to inability, maybe due to illness, or just because they do not want to, that should not lead to criticism, sanctions, or even social exclusion. On the next slide, and lastly, we assessed the agreement and disagreement with another norm. The norm we call that of altruistic disengagement, which basically means that older people should disengage from and not become a burden on society. In response to the statement, in the statement that older people should not become a burden to society, and should come to terms with their age and not try to appear young, 41% of respondents agreed. Moreover, a third of respondents each agreed with the statements that older people should forfeit important professional and societal roles in favor of younger individuals and should not become a burden to society. This relatively high level of agreement is a pretty concerning find because this norm most likely also reflects age discrimination or even self-age discriminatory attitudes and also behavioral tendencies. Interestingly, on the next slide, it shows that this expectation was particularly strong among older respondents themselves. This finding can be interpreted as an indication of internalized ageism among older respondents. It also suggests that older people in our society may lack perceived opportunities to express their very own interests and ambitions in contributing to society in ways other than withdrawing and not becoming a burden. On the next slide, from this, we would like to draw the conclusion that we absolutely need new social cultural roles that need to be created for older people so that they may actively express their perceived societal responsibility within those norms. On the next slide, I would like to conclude that in fact, we did not find strong evidence for universal ageism. However, our study results revealed that there is, in fact, a presence of age stereotypes, and there's also ambivalence and even maybe a lack of imagination, especially concerning the societal role of older and very old individuals. Additionally, the study also showed that younger individuals tend to negatively assess political power held by older people, especially in the context of climate change. And so the takeaway that we show on the last slide, the takeaway from all of this is that all of us should learn to recognize and understand ageism, both within others and ourselves, because challenging ageist views opens up new opportunities for a positive shaping of the life phase of old age, wholesome and holistic societal contribution, and only in this way we can prevent the societal exclusion of people just because they belong to a certain age group. And with this, I would like to conclude the presentation, and thank you very much for your interest.